Hi everyone, this is episode 12 of One Step at a Time with Charlie Chen. Um, this is actually the second recording of this because the first one had audio issues. Special shout out to Noah for pointing this out. Thank you very much. Now, the topic of episode 12 I want to talk about is how everything is a grift. Everything is a grift, or at least in America. In Chinese, it's called 被玩坏了,被玩烂了. It means that pretty much the game has been played so much that the optimal way of playing is to cheat and do things that it was never meant to do, right? And so instead of beating a dead horse, I guess I'll just go over like the different things or how it manifests in today's world. And in a way, this video is also for someone like my mom, who, for a lack of a better word, has been pretty sheltered in our small town back in New Mexico, living with my stepfather. But this is not to say that what she's going through is not painful or important. It's just that outside of a small town communities, things are also pretty bad out here in the city. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about, let's see. Oh yeah, as you know, I have been unemployed for 5 months, and thankfully I was able to find a job recently, so I should be working again later this month. And but the thing is, I more or less take on a 30% pay cut, and in the world that now costs like pretty much I make about as much as I first got out of college with this new job, but in a world that has inflated past the cost of things when I first got out of college. So it won't kill me, but it's also not going to be enjoyable. So, but you know, one good thing about this job that I like is that despite the lack of payment, I will be in a position where I get to teach future generations about technology, something that I have been experienced in. So if that's the way it has to be, then so be it, right? But anyway, it's because I was unemployed for the last 5 months that I have sort of gained some insight into the system that I never thought I would have been part of. And as much as people want to bash on welfare queens and welfare kings, sometimes I ask myself which came first. Was the system broken in the first place, or are people lazy, right? Because you say people are lazy, but what if the system was never meant for you to win? Well, if the system was never meant for you to win, why participate, right? Anyway, so a few things I noticed while I was unemployed. Right, self-checkouts were terrible because well, it does a number in your head, like it applies a pressure in your head when you're just doing self-checkout as an unemployed person, because you're essentially working for the privilege of paying, which is like a double slap on the face, right? And then let's see what else. Well, here I live in Texas now, and you see Texas doesn't have income tax, but Texas pretty much shifts it from income tax to pretty much everything you spend money on, like property tax or sales tax or other forms of taxes, right? Well, when you're unemployed, you have no income, which means you don't get the benefit of no income tax, and you have all the downside of how everything else is more expensive, relatively speaking, because of a higher sales tax, right? Thirdly, Right. From when I was laid off till now, I still haven't collected a penny of unemployment, and and despite the fact I tried, and when I tried to call them before I even got any money, the the automatic message goes like this: if you are applying for unemployment and it has ran out, we have no more to give. The unemployment rate in Texas is too low to give any additional benefits. And I'm like, I'm here trying to get my benefit in the first place, and you're already complaining about giving out benefits to people who were already on it. So it's almost like pulling teeth, for a lack of a better word. But anyway, and then let's see. Right. When you work, number four, another annoying thing about being unemployed is, you know how when you work, you look forward to the weekend, right? After 5 days of working, you're like, finally, I get to have 2 days of breaks, right? Well, as an unemployed person, let's say I put in my job application on Friday, but then I know that in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, they're not going to look at this job application until Monday. That's like 2 days of additional wait and trying to figure out how to survive, right? So, yeah, these are my full points about like just this eye opening experience of being unemployed, right? And then as for the whole working thing, right? I guess what I'm trying to say for that is it's important to work hard, but make sure that it's on your own terms and make sure that you're getting what you want out of hard work. Because, well, from my past experiences, just being a worker bee without taking a temperature check slash wind check, like you sort of have to know which direction things are going. If you don't pay attention to those and all you do is like keep your head down and work, next time when you look up, the sky will change and the world will play by a different rule. And then what have you all worked for, right? Because everything you have worked for, as we talked about before, manipulators like to change the way things work. And if they change the things work, then all your hard work and dedication would have been for nothing because the rules have changed, right? But anyway, and so the thing about working a job, which is interesting, it's like first you need to obey to survive. What do I mean by that? You can be smart, you can be hardworking, but you also need to be obedient to whoever feeds you, pays you, and manages you, right? So for you to get that job, you pretty much have to be obedient. But when the time comes, they'll kick you to the curb, knowing that you won't likely fight back because you've been obedient and compliant the whole time. It's like it's in your. They pretty much groomed you from a young age till now to be an obedient worker, right? So for you to retaliate after they fire you, it's against the nature that have been groomed into you growing up. And of course, on top of that, they what's it called? They hire lawyers and lobbyists to fight off the people who actually were to fight back, right? Because that's the thing. You were entitled to certain things, and when they let you go, they know that some of you won't fight for what belongs to you. So that's already profit. And on top of that, and with that profit, it has enough slack for them to actually hire lawyers and lobbyists. And if you were to actually fight, now you have to fight through lawyers and lobbyists, which further decreases your chance of getting what you're owed, right? So, yeah, it's at an interesting balance where not playing by the rules actually is profitable. And this is also to say that our current economy, they call it the K-shaped recovery, which is the stocks and the speculative markets are going so high and regular people are suffering, right? And remember how they say vote with your wallet? How can you vote with an empty wallet or when you have no wallet, right? Anyways, but there are so many other grifts, like they want you to blame the immigrants while they're deporting all the immigrants. Well, if all the immigrants are gone, who are you going to blame, right? Or they want you to blame the AI, but if you think about it, all the jobs been offshored to Asian countries like India and China, right? And then while the ones that still have like management, and those who still have their job, they work in management, and they sort of want to freeze it so that they themselves have the resources and the position to understand how to use AI for their job and how to control it so that they don't just let in some new whippersnapper or some new hire with more experience in AI to challenge their position in managerial roles, right? So the main theme of all this is pretty much control and power, right? And then, of course, this also bring up to one of my favorite amendments. So we talked about First Amendment, the freedom of speech, and Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Now, the Third Amendment is that citizens should not have to house soldiers except during wartime, right? But if you really think about it, it has been circumvented in today's world, right? For instance, wartime. Think about right now they're trying to create insurrections in different cities like Chicago and other places so that they can so that they can proceed with martial law or insurrection act or whatever, right? And then you also think about like no housing of soldiers, right? Well, with changing of times, the definition of a soldier changes. What if a soldier is a spy, a robotic spy in your computer, right? Because you like with the Snowden situation, you know the NSA and things like that are spying on people. What was it? I think it passed in 2000. Pretty much after 9/11, they did something that allows them to just listen in on people, right? And then that's one, right? But then what if it's not even controlled by the government? It's done by companies like Amazon and Microsoft and other companies who are listening to you all the time, and then they sell the data to government. Is that still considered a soldier, right? So the Third Amendment really needs to be updated. But that's the thing, right? Right now we see the situation where they're trying to create a situation where the citizens are very uncomfortable, and if they were to fight back, they can do insurrection act, right? Well, wars are also manufactured, and to justify an expansion in the rights and resources. And then if you look at it, you think about how many unjust wars we have been to in America. And that's the thing, right? The veterans of those wars, they were never meant to be there because they weren't even part of the equation, because the whole idea is to create a tense situation to get more power as a power grab. Like the veterans are essentially stooges that were sent over there to make it look menacing. So when these veterans are actually get hurt and need resources and come back, they don't actually want to pay out to them, because to them, the veterans weren't even part of the equation. They were only supposed to be there to make it look scary so that they can ask for more rights and resources, right? And just like veterans, this is also happening to our kids. Because so this thing that's happening, and this is not just some minority group or rich people, so what they do is that first they collect more taxes from you and I in the name of making a school better, right? And then they overtake the school board. And after they take over the school board, they start increasing the test requirements for the school. And next thing you know, the students aren't passing, they're struggling, right? And then as the students are struggling, they put the school under probationary status. And then eventually the student cannot pass it, whether it's because the parents don't have more time, the teachers have more time, or it's just plain designed to make the students fail, to give the school a bad rating. Eventually, the school can no longer call itself a school because of the bad output based on rigged performance reports, right? Then they get to sell the school pennies on the dollar, and that's the thing, isn't it? So you have the bureaucrats who sit in at these education institutions where they get to make money doing nothing or creating problems, but then at the end they get to sell it to their own buddies, pennies on the dollar, and then they move on to the next host, right? And then you think about all the kids. Imagine working your butt off only to get the bad grade, and you don't know why, right? So you think about all these kids being essentially stooges. Again, they're essentially sacrifices in this whatever game, this grift that's going on. And then you turn around, you ask, why aren't employers hiring Gen Z, even though you know that they were pretty much damaged goods or collateral damage in whatever shell game they're playing with real estate, right? And these buildings are remade into rentals or even office buildings or maybe even a private school, right? So that's the thing. People are turned into stooges against their will, or they don't even know about it. All they know is they're hurt and they don't know why, because it's manipulation at the highest degree, because good manipulation, people can't see it, right? And then, of course, in comedy, and this is not to say that comedy is a grift, but comedy, there's just so much things people have to do for free just for a few to stand tall and actually make money. It's very much you know how they say that this thing has value because people believe it has value? Sometimes it does feel like that, even though this country needs good comedy more so than ever. So we have that. But yeah, they pretty much broke the game, or rather they optimized the life out of living, right? Because, for instance, they make essentials expensive and luxuries cheap, right? Because if you make the essentials expensive, that's a guaranteed income. Because if you're pitting people against death, be it water, air, food, a place to live, electricity, you have guaranteed returns, right? And then you make luxuries cheap, to distract them. But this creates a situation where people don't want to work, because it becomes that you work and you end up costing about the same when you come back. So not only did you work essentially for free, you also lost time, which is really disrespectful to people's life. But anyway, this is pretty much a dense summary of what I wanted to talk about. I apologize for the first video not being recorded properly with sound errors. So thanks again, Noah. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.